So for those of you who have been to a Rise Together event before, for once, I'm not the one doing the talking, and you're going to see more and more of that as we have more and more forums and engagements and events as we come forward. You probably were all handed a QR code with a paper on it for our event this Thursday. Many of you have already been to a Rise Together event. We've got one on the west side on this Thursday, so tell your friends, it's outdoors, socially distanced. We really would love your help in building a great crowd for Thursday. It's an introduction to Rise Together, one of our usual talks. But that's not today. Today is our first candidates forum. And, you know, there's a lot to be said about policy and the individual races, and we will certainly have all kinds. You'll see a candidate one-on-one videos and talks and, you know, policy discussions and debates, and all of those things come forward. But for us, it was really important to answer one question up front, which is, with things the way they are in this city, why the hell would anyone want to hold office? And so today is not about policy, although certainly those threads run deeply through everyone sitting up here. And we'll have more of these. We've got one in Hollywood coming up at the beginning of October. We've got one elsewhere in the city coming up in the middle of October. So you'll see lots of candidates start to cycle through in every race. But it's about the human beings in this race. You know, this last week, you know, if you've got our Rise Together email, we've been called baby killer socialists, funded by George Soros, and then we were told that we were right-wing extremists to the right of Larry Elder. Both of those things can't be true, right? You gotta choose something. You gotta choose a side. But the reality is that you know you're doing something right when you're making the extreme ideologies angry. And the reality is that what we go through at Rise Together is nothing into the highs and lows of what candidates have to go through. And I want to focus on the highs as well. The inspiration that they find every day, the inspiration that I take from each of you showing up, from the conversations that I have, from people coming to our events and saying, wow, for the first time in a long time, I feel like there's a path forward for this city. There is a path forward if we can just get enough people on this train. I'm pleased to report that the train is running healthy and running strong, thanks to all of you as we continue to recruit. We are hitting saturation levels in market. If you saw our councilman spot, it was seen by 2 out of 3 Angelino voters with a 90% positive sentiment rating, which means that everybody understands that when we rise together, we move forward. So thank you for that support. Thank you for spreading the word. Spread the word about Thursday. And most importantly, thank you to each of these candidates for showing up today for our first candidates forum, for something that is non-traditional, a little different. And I appreciate your willingness to engage with all of us. And I will hand it over to the incredible Aura Vasquez, who herself was a former candidate for office, so understands this very, very well. She is incredibly experienced in every aspect, involved in every nonprofit that I know of, in a leadership position, and is the perfect person to host this event. So thank you so much for hosting.
All right, friends, thank you so much for being here. So, you know, we're almost out of the pandemic, and it's so exciting to see everyone, to see other people around. So thank you so much for being here. So before we start, and I tell you guys, you know, we do a little bit of a land acknowledgement and the rules and procedures. Please look around and say hello to your neighbor, please. Tell them how grateful you are to see other people around. I mean, we were indoors for so long. Let's celebrate that now we're here together. And with that spirit, I want to start with a land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that Los Angeles, we are in unceded lands of the Tovenga, Chumash, and Tavitam territory, and recognize our water is taken from the Paiute territory up in the Owens Valley of Inyo County. We recognize the importance of the land and water acknowledgement out of respect for the ancestors and current caretakers of the land, but also recognize that this is first step in a long-term process for amends for indigenous people. So thank you so much, everyone. Welcome. So now the rules. This is not a policy-based forum. It is designed to help educate all of us about who you are and more importantly, help them invest in positive motivation for other candidates for office. We will have other forums where we can talk about policy and really dig deeper about what candidates want to do. No candidates literature. I don't see anybody trying to start anything here. No distribution or anything. No signing petitions here. There will be no opening statements. Okay, let's see what else. All questions will be asked by me. Thank God. Candidates might answer the same questions or might be asked different questions. So we have a pool. We also have a pool of questions that people draw in here. Questions have not been provided to the candidates, so we are going cold turkey here a little bit. And policy-related questions and discussions will not be permitted. I already said that. There will be a timekeeper, our beautiful Carla here, and she's gonna let you know when you have 30 seconds and when you have to stop. Don't make me stop you because that will not make me look good. Candidates will be given 1 minute for a closing statement. And as I said, written questions are gonna be here, and I'm gonna just pick a question, so hope for the best. All right, so don't forget that on Thursday, we're going to have another event, and it's up to you to make it amazing. So please call your friends, your ex-wives, future boyfriends, whoever you want. Get them to come to this forum because it's important for us to hear from other incredible candidates that are putting really all their heart and mind in running for office. I'm Aura Vasquez, as Craig shared. I'm a former Los Angeles Department of Water and Power Commissioner. I also part of a couple of boards, and I'm not going to bore you with all of those credentials, but I want you to say that I also ran for office, and I know how hard it is, so I have the most respect for all of you for putting your name on the hat and for trying your best. So thank you so much. So let's just start. Let's give a round of applause, and let's just begin. This question is for everyone. So lots of people talk about their passion for the city when discussing why they choose to run. So we should hope that in this case, no one should be running unless they're passionate about saving our city or making it better. What is your inspiration for running, and what's driven your passion for being a candidate and make our city better?
Starting with me.
Start with
Hi
you.
everyone, I'm Kevin James. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the candidates for running. I would thank you for your participation, and to Craig and Zachary and Kate for putting this together. Most importantly, for all of you for engaging in the process. The short answer on why I decided to run and why I was inspired to run for city attorney is because I wanted to bring a new legal strategy to the way the city solves our crises. Now, that's a short answer to what is a longer process, I think, for at least for me and for a lot of other people that I know, into what inspires them to run for office. I've run twice. I ran in 2012, 2013 in the mayor's race. And there's a foundation, a kind of common denominator of why I've run in both races, although the offices are very different. Obviously, in the city attorney's race, like I said, is to bring a different legal strategy to our crises in Los Angeles. But the real inspiration comes from wanting to be in public service in general. So everyone in this room, because you're interested in public service or you wouldn't be here, you might just yourself find yourself as a future candidate. So never say no. The inspiration, though, comes from an earlier time in my life, and I see this kind of common across the board with people that have run successfully and unsuccessfully. For me, it was activism. And I didn't choose to be an activist. I felt forced into activism. I turned 18 in August of 1981. I'm 58 years old. And it was 8 weeks after the United States, the world, discovered the AIDS epidemic. I'm a gay man. And I started my adulthood at 18 in this very dark shadow, recognizing that our government at every single level would pay no attention to us. It was unbelievable what we went through in those years. I was unable to come out of the closet in college. When I went to law school, I was in Oklahoma, by the way, as well, which wasn't a particularly comfortable place to be as a gay man in the beginning of the AIDS crisis. I moved to Houston to go to the University of Houston for law school. I was able to come out there in my personal life But then once I discovered that I obviously wanted to have a professional life, that there were going to be serious ceilings, not necessarily even glass ceilings, for gay people in the HIV and AIDS environment that we were living in. So I started looking for a community that would accept me. I moved to Los Angeles because it was that community. I started working in AIDS service organizations, and in Los Angeles, it was at AIDS Project Los Angeles. That's where I discovered public service and the real purpose for public service. It wasn't in student congress in college, it was actually when we were dealing with life and death crises, when in my age of 18 to 25, that became middle age for our community because of the AIDS epidemic. And you learn real quick when you're in a life and death circumstance, especially for people that were so young and are your peers, you learn real quick how to deal with government. And sometimes government may not respond to you. And when they don't, many people become activists. And that's how I became an activist, and that was what inspired me to get into public service.
Thank you, James. Appreciate your answer. Okay, now we got next the same question for Tracy Park, who is a candidate for Los Angeles City Council District 11.
Hi, thank you. And thank you to Craig and Jim for having us this afternoon. I absolutely love the west side of Los Angeles. We have some of the most iconic parts of the city of Los Angeles and some of the best tourist and recreation destinations in all of California. From Venice Beach, which I consider to be the cultural heart of the West Side, to the Skirball Center and the Getty Center, PCH, and Will Rogers State Beach. I love this community. Like many of you, I have watched with a broken heart and rising anger over the last several years about the things that have been happening in our community and the non-responsiveness of our local elected leaders to those concerns. Many of you may know that I am a municipal attorney. I work very closely with cities and counties and other public entities around the state of California. So I oftentimes work with city managers and police and fire chiefs and department heads to craft good policies. I serve in an advice and counsel role. I also serve in a litigation role. I was not looking to make a swerve into local politics, but I realized as my community here in Venice, I'm a Venice resident, began to crumble. I have had a front row seat at ground zero of the crisis on the West Side. And I was spurred into action because I care so much about this community. And I realized that the only way that we were going to make the changes that are necessary to make this city safe and welcoming and a thriving community for everyone was to bring new leadership and fresh ideas and restore trust in the community and to really bring back what it means to be a representative of the constituents and the stakeholders who elect you. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to do that and to translate my experience as a public sector attorney into a policy-making role that really achieves the solutions that many in our communities here in CD 11 and across the city are looking for. One of the things that has inspired me most in connection with this process has been the people that I have met across the district and across the city. There are so many people that historically haven't been civically engaged in their communities who are currently stepping up to lead initiatives to make our communities safer and better for everyone. I've had the opportunity to spend time with many of the neighborhood and community councils across the district and in their committees and subcommittees, and I am so incredibly impressed by the work and the dedication of so many from across our community. I recognized going into this, I can't do this job on my own, and I am thrilled at the opportunity to partner with our community leaders and folks who are already engaged in doing this work in our communities and taking that and going to City Hall to advocate for the changes that our community needs.
Thank you, Tracy. And now we have Marina Torres, who is a candidate for also city attorney. Go for it.
Thank you, Aura, and thank you everyone for being here and for giving up a little bit of your Saturday to listen to us. So as Aura said, my name is Marina Torres and I'm running for LA City Attorney. And my big motivation is because, quite frankly, this country has given myself and my family everything. I mean, my family came over undocumented from Mexico, and we came in incredibly poor. There were days when we didn't have enough to eat. But they came over because of, belief that so many people of my generation and before had, that this was a country of opportunity, that this was a country where if you came and you worked really hard, the opportunities were there. You could take them, and in my case, take them up all the way to Stanford and beyond. I've been a federal prosecutor now for several years, and as part of my day job, I take down, what some would say are the worst of the worst in the Central District. And I'm, quite frankly, really proud to have done that. I'm really proud of the things that I have done in my current job as a political appointee under the Obama administration and in the private sector. And I'm running for office, and in particular for city attorney, because I'm growing increasingly concerned that the opportunities that my family and that others saw in this country and in this city are in danger. I mean, I don't have to tell folks here, but it's growing increasingly harder to live in this city. It's growing increasingly harder to just walk down the street in this city, let alone try to run a business and support and have a family. And that's not the way it's supposed to be, and that's not the way it needs to be. I'm part of what I hope to be a wave of people that is running for city office here in Los Angeles, because if we keep doing the same thing, if we keep electing the same people that come from the same background, we're going to keep getting the same problems. Right now, half of City Hall is either under federal indictment or under active criminal investigation, right? And that's what happens when you elect politicians to keep doing the same job. Because what happens is politicians are good at running for office, right? I'm running for city attorney, having been an attorney for quite a while. And the motivations that got me to where I am today are the motivations and the values and the principles that I'm going to take into that job. I want LA to be, again, what it could be, what it has been in the past. I want it to be a place where people can come in and feel like, you know what? This is a place where I can see my family living for generations in. This is a city where I want to welcome people in and not be afraid of what's going to happen to them when they go to the grocery store a couple blocks down. It's the kind of city that we should be really proud of when people come in and visit from other areas. And I think it's possible. I think we're really reaching a point where we can do that. So thank you, everyone.
So now we have Rob Wilcox, who is also a candidate for city control. Same question.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank Rise Together for the great work that they're doing. And I'm always reminded when Craig speaks, the same thought goes through my mind. I'm thankful he's not running for city control. I thank him for the work that he's doing. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, but sometimes I don't even recognize this city. We are a city in crisis. I've committed a good portion of my life to public service. I work in city government. For 7 years, I was deputy to City Controller Lord Chick. I see the power and the possibilities of that office. I'm enthusiastic about being the next city controller, and I will tell you that the vast majority of Angelinos don't know what the heck a city controller is. But it's one of the most consequential offices in the city of Los Angeles. The controller is the truth teller, the inspector general, the taxpayer's watchdog, can do the auditing, go into the deep recesses of government, can audit anything that city money, your public dollars, taxpayer dollars run through, and ask and answer the questions, how are we doing and how can we do it better? We know what we're doing now is not working. I want to be part of the solution, part of the change. I believe that this is going to be a change versus status quo election. When you mentioned term limits, I remember at one time I supported term limits. What a joke they are. Because you have I think it's what the majority of the city council are former assembly members. You go from office to office to office. So the ultimate term limit is at the ballot box for what the voters say. And I believe we're going to see great change candidates. I stepped up because candidates for city controllers started declaring about 1.5 years ago. I kept watching the field. I really have a passion for that office and what it can be and what it can do. And I didn't see the kinds of candidates that I thought were going to be the kind of controller that I could, with the experience and the passion that I have to fundamentally change our city and present the kinds of roadmaps for change to our elected leaders. And a controller has no power to implement any of the solutions or recommendations, but they can beat the drums and get all of you as part of making sure that we do affect change through public support, through the media. I know how to do that. I was there when it was done with Laura Chick. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have Sam Yuri, who is a candidate for City Council District 5.
Thank you, Aura. Thank you for moderating. To Jim, thank you for hosting us today. To Kate, Zachary, and of course Craig, and all of Rise Together for bringing us here today. And thank you for also taking some time today to talk about these really important issues facing our city. This is a really personal question for me. My family moved to Los Angeles when I was a year old as refugees from Iran. My parents literally arrived here. My mother holding me in one arm, my father holding 2 suitcases. 3 local public elementary schools on the west side. Eventually I went to Yale and came back and started a family and a business here. I've lived the American dream and I love this city. I love it to my core. I love the fact that all of us are talking about how much we love the city because it's something that we don't hear enough anymore, right? We hear about all the problems. This is a great city. And when I came back to law school, I tried to be of service and make a difference in any way I could as a young lawyer, do pro bono work, helping organizations that help individuals with special needs, or our local library in Westwood, Hating Fight, the Defamation League, and other organizations. And my wife and I have 4 little kids. We bought a home in Westwood. We really lived the American dream, and we loved it. We really loved the city. We never thought we'd ever consider leaving. About a year ago, we really looked around, and like Rob was saying, the city's become unrecognizable. Like Marina was saying, the quality of life, to say the least, has changed before our very eyes. We had that conversation. Do we want to raise our kids in this city? That's all going through your minds, right? And we were faced with a choice of, are we just going to assume that someone will fix it, right? The same old folks will do something differently for once, right? It's not going to happen. Or are we going to uproot our family, move to a different city, hoping for the best? Or are we going to fight for the city? And we chose the latter. And I'm fighting for the city for a lot of the reasons that you're here, what we've heard today, is that this city's worth fighting for. And I love it to my core. And the problems that we face in this city, you can draw a direct line, something that Rise Together speaks about, because of the leaders that we've elected. Like Marina was saying, 2 of the 15 faced federal prison for accepting gold and prostitutes on the job while instead of doing the people's job. They're not tackling the big issues. They're not being creative about homelessness and public safety. I don't let my kids ride their bikes in our neighborhood anymore. I did. I walked half a mile to my public elementary school. Things have changed, right? But it doesn't have to be this way. That certainly is the message of Rise Together, and certainly the premise of my campaign, is that if good people band together, work hard together, we can really bring change to the city. And we have to. The city's at a precipice, it's at a crossroads. We either start doing things differently by electing different people who aren't tied to the same old folks who make all decisions in the city, or we're stuck with the same old direction and the city's going to be unlivable in 5 or 10 years. And I'm not going to let that happen. And that's why I'm running for the 5th Council District.
Thank you. And to get things moving along, I want to ask Marina and also Tracy a question. So my question is, people are fired up in some areas of the city, and yet not everywhere. The flood of new voters is coming, so how do you plan to engage them? So we'll start with you, Tracy. How are you planning to engage all this new wave of voters coming in?
Yeah, sure. There are definitely people coming together around the city and certainly here in CD11. I have seen the communities in my district unite in a way that I have never seen before around core issues that are across political lines important to every single one of us. Protecting our beaches and our parks and keeping our neighborhoods safe. One of the things, and you've probably all heard Craig talk about this, is with the change in the timing of the election, we are going to have more voters on June 7th than we have historically had in any municipal election over the last 150 years. So I am really excited about the opportunity to meet with and to engage with new voters. I am working really hard to spend as much time as I can in every single neighborhood in our district, in every single pocket of our community. And I have had the opportunity to meet with young people and hear their concerns about affordable housing and how they make this a city that they can buy into and that they can afford to live in. I have heard concerns from senior citizens in different parts of our community about our failing services and the fact that they can't utilize the senior center in Westchester Park. And so I am doing everything I can to hear the concerns that span generations, that address the concerns of our business communities and our families. And so I am spending time in person and developing a campaign platform that is intentionally responsive to those concerns and incorporates the needs and the asks and the results that all of the constituencies in my district are asking for.
Thank you. And now Marina?
Sure. You guys, I think 2020 is going to be so different in so many ways. 2022, thank you. 2020 already. Hopefully we don't get more of that in 2022. Hopefully that's over. But 2022, this election, I mean, for reasons that Aura mentioned, we're going to be having an unprecedented amount of new voters coming to the polls. And it shouldn't be any surprise, right? Folks have typically not voted in municipal elections. They have such low voter turnout. But that's changing because all of the elections, all the federal, the mayor's race, all the elections are lined up in 2022. So we're going to have a flood of new voters coming in. And I think that what's different now is, quite frankly, as we've mentioned already, things have gotten so bad. It's affected everybody in the entire city. Folks have, concerns, as folks have mentioned, the senior center. I mean, I grew up incredibly poor using all of the social services, right? I learned how to swim in local community parks. I used, the community swing sets. I went to public school. All of these things that characterize such the experiences of so many Angelenos right now, the problems that are affecting the city are affecting all of those experiences of everybody. And so I think we are going to have a wave of voters coming in, and they're going to want change. They're going to want new people coming in, new electeds. And so my campaign, we launched our campaign right before COVID, actually right before the pandemic, about a week before. And so we've already put in over a year of Zoom calls, actual calls, meetings in person when we could, to try to reach out to everybody all around the city. And even when we weren't fundraising, we were listening. We were listening to see what was going on, what were the concerns of people. And I will tell you, first and foremost, everyone is concerned about their quality of life. And that's everywhere in the city. That's not these neighborhood pockets, that is everyone. And that is the number 1, 2, and 3 thing that people are going to come in and vote on in 2022.
Thank you. All right, so this question, we're going to start with Sam. So the question is, being in the public eye and as someone that experienced that, sometimes you just have people that are not for you. They're just anti you.
I'll never accept that, but go ahead.
Sadly. So how did you engage people that are anti you? Did you even engage?
Yeah, no, part of my practice as a lawyer is not only a litigator fighting for my clients, but I've also served as a mediator. And the job of a good mediator is to listen and find that shared common ground, right? And there will be people with whom I just won't agree on, whether we should upzone and get rid of single-family housing, or what we should do with folks who are unhoused and how we should treat the issue, or police reform. There could be issues that we just don't agree upon. There could be conservation issues, environmental. There's things that we may view the world differently. But there will be something that we're going to agree upon. And especially if someone has deep roots in Los Angeles and is engaging me in these issues, we're going to find something to agree upon and just build from there. And what I often start with is not the issues like homelessness or public safety or quality of life, affordability of rent. Those things I think are actually symptoms of the greater problem that we're all here to address and the purpose of Rise Together, which is the failure to hold the people in government accountable. We haven't been electing, I don't even like the word of electing, hiring the best and the brightest for these jobs. The person who represents any council member is supposed to represent 250 to 270,000 people, has a discretionary budget of $2.5 million, oversees over $10.5 billion, and a couple thousand people generally elect that person. And then once that person gets in, they're not accountable to Unite, they're not listening to us. Maybe they show up to an event once in a while or send their staff. We have failed. They haven't failed us. We have not done enough to force them to do the right thing. And they say only listen when we sue them, or we embarrass them in the press, we protest, right? That's not how it's supposed to work. So when I talk about holding our elected officials accountable, everyone agrees. Because 99 out of 100 people that I speak to, and I've already spoken to 3,000 voters in the council district, will say this is heading in the wrong direction. They may have a single issue or single mindset on a certain issue, but if they say, hey, are you better off now than you were 4, 8, 12 years ago? No one's going to say yes. And it's our job to elect the best and the brightest, to hire the best and the brightest, and then hold our feet to the fire to make sure we do what we promise you that we're going to do, because that's our job. We're all here interviewing for a very, very important job. So you got to make sure you ask us the right questions, and then we do what we promise to do.
Thank you. Thank you. So now, same question for Rob. How do you engage the haters?
Well, it's interesting that the city controller's office, when I explain what a city controller is and I've been speaking to groups across the city, doing public comment during neighborhood councils, talking to homeowners groups, business groups, progressive groups, all across the political spectrum. And when I say the job of the controller is to be the taxpayer watchdog, to make sure that your dollars are spent effectively and efficiently, and that we have much greater transparency so you know what's going on in City Hall. That is a message that cuts across all political spectrum. And people are eager for that transparency. And when you say accountability and holding the elected leaders' feet to the fire, the controller can help do that. Because we can call out the problems, we can put forward the solutions, and we can say when government is not doing its job, when the elected leaders have failed us, when those recommendations are not implemented and the problems are not fixed, the controller calls that out. And so that's how I've been engaging our voters. And look, there are going to be people, when they ask how I, on an issue like defund the police, I'm not a defund the police person, and you're going to lose them. There are single issue folks. There are people that want to have a litmus test. And you still want to be pleasant, you want to engage and keep them engaged, but you're not going to win over everybody. But I think it's great to be as accessible as you possibly can, to talk to as many people as you can, to keep the conversation going. We can't talk to one another anymore when it comes to politics, and that's sad, because I remember it was a totally different kind of profession many years ago, that you could have conservatives, moderates, and liberals talk to one another, and also when you talk to one another, you also solved problems, and that's what we're not doing now. Now I look at the city council, and they don't seem to be angry at one another. They work really well together. I don't know what they're doing, but so that's the other end of the spectrum, is that you also have to get something done. And I am very encouraged by the people that are stepping up and running, that are change agents. This is a change versus status quo election, and it's probably the most consequential election in modern history.
Thank you. What about you, James? How do you engage people that are not so that are anti you?
Well, thank you for that question. I was really hoping I was going to get to ask that one out. I have some experience in it. Part of this, our form is that we're not spending a lot of time on policy, obviously, but it's to get to know us a little bit. I'll tell you something about my background. I spent a decade or so on the public airwaves in Los Angeles in addition to my full-time job as a lawyer. I practiced law since 1988 here in Los Angeles. And you spend a lot of time with folks in that environment that don't agree with you. Sometimes you want to sow that yourself to create disagreement. And one of the things that I learned in that part of my career was that it was very, very easy to complain. And it was almost entertaining to be able to complain. It was much harder in that aspect of my career when I started to recognize that to be effective, I needed to find solutions. Solutions, number one. And number two, to complicate it even further, solutions that are workable, that are practical, that yes, are common sense, because it's government and people need to understand it. So an election like this is not just about the candidates. We all agree on that. It's about a partnership. And there's a partnership between all of the voters, and I'm very excited, very supportive of the new election dates to engage more people in municipal elections. But for us, it has to be a partnership with the electorate and the candidates. And what I would ask all of you to do is to spend the time necessary. The time you've taken today to be here is significant. If you take just that amount of time to educate yourself on the policies of the candidates, read their websites. This goes to two questions. One, everyone has websites now. There's a lot of information that's available, and that's why you're part of the partnership to avoid all the problems that you've heard my colleagues talk about today, is to get familiar with what the candidates are offering that are policy solutions, not just the complaints, because if all you get is a complainer, you're going to see the status quo. You need to see solutions that are workable and can be done, and government work is hard. To the point on haters, I had a couple of, in the next chapter of my life, I was president of the Board of Public Works in the city of Los Angeles, second largest department on the city budget, and I was also director of the Mayor's Office of Film and Television Production for the last 7 years. Something that Sam said a minute ago that's exactly right. Government is a collaboration. Community engagement is significantly important, so is transparency. And to have success, you've got to bring people from different opinions and different positions together and to try and find compromise. I felt myself as a mediator as well in the 1,041 public hearings that I chaired, and every one of them are available online. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So there are a bunch of other questions related to funding, to raising funds, but I want to take this question from the public because we want to hear from you guys too. And, okay. How will you overcome the mob mentality and cancel culture? So maybe we can just get all of the candidates to respond a little bit quickly. Maybe not use the 3 minutes so that we can go into more questions. So who would like to begin? I give it open to whoever. Who wants to talk about overcoming the mob mentality and cancel culture?
I can start that one. I normally take down mobs. So this mob mentality, it's interesting that Craig and I were talking about this, and there are some crazies out there, right? And then there's also, I think, especially the longer, I've seen this, the longer you stay in an elected position, I think that there's this propensity to just doing what it takes to staying in there. And I think that's incredibly, incredibly dangerous. I think this is, again, we're going to go back full circle, but I think this is exactly why the city right now needs fresh blood and why we need fresh new leadership. Because it's exactly that. The mob mentality is what is driving, I think, a lot of these bad policies that aren't really doing anything, right? It's just keeping the status quo. And it's like the people passing this legislation and creating these policies aren't actually living in the city. I don't know if you guys feel that way, but I feel like when I see what's going through city council, I'm like, are you living here? Like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? there's such a disconnect, and I think it's because people tend to follow that mob mentality. So no, I mean, I think you have to let people that are coming in from the outside. I certainly am, and I will tell you, as one of a couple first-time candidates on the stage, it's incredibly difficult to come in as a first-time candidate. But that is exactly, I think, what we need in 2022. And so to overcome the mob mentality, I mean, I'm really grateful, quite frankly, to have so much support from people here in LA. Thank you.
And I'll follow up on Marina's comments. One of the things that we have experienced, particularly in CD11, is a lot of people being pitted against each other, and a lot of rhetoric and behavior by our current elected leaders that contributes to that kind of mentality and culture. And one of the things that I'm really excited about the opportunity to do is to stop that. I'm not interested in mob mentality. I'm tired of the name calling. I'm tired of the us versus them approach that is being taken to bedrock issues in our district and in our city. I am open to collaborating with people of different ideas and hearing from the best of the best and working collaboratively with stakeholders and subject matter experts. I don't live in an echo chamber of people who just agree with me, and I am willing to hear out anyone that wants to talk to me about issues, because I agree that on the bedrock things that matter most, there is a lot of common ground already, and we lead best from that common ground, and I will work hard to build consensus around issues so that we're not being ruled by mob mentality. I think that is really important, and I welcome the opportunity to reestablish that collaborative relationship between our elected officials and our constituents.
Thank you.
And I just want to say with what Marina and Tracy were saying is that, yes, collaborate, communicate, don't give up, keep talking about facts. That's one of the great things about the city controller's race, the city controller's office, is that it's based on going in, you having auditors, and they look at the facts. They look at the documents. It's not a liberal or conservative approach, it's what's not working. And I think too often we get caught in these political arguments and with the mob mentality that it's their way or the highway. And you've got to be able to say, hey, let's look at, there's so much disinformation. This fuels the mob mentality, of course, and talk radio and the internet and all of that. But you can't have alternative facts. Sorry, there aren't such things. But that's a belief in people. And so the controller has the ability to really provide that information. And I think that's what we've got to get to. But always, we've got to not be afraid of standing up for what we believe, but we don't have to be harsh. It's the tone. It's so much of the tone. Of course, it's that what many people are saying is just not true. That's a problem, but it's the tone. We've got to get more civil, and I think that we can do that in stepping up and becoming leaders. We can change that discourse.
Thank you. James, I see you going, or do you?
Sam was gonna stand up.
Sam, go for it.
Okay, thank you. Really quickly, the way this affects our lives locally and how it affects local government is that for too long, our elected officials are listening to the loudest and angriest voices on Twitter, or the people on the streets, rather than the average Angelino who's going about raising their family, paying their taxes, and running their business. We're too busy to engage in the process, which is the purpose of this organization, which is hoping to change that. And for those of your football fans, do your darn job, right? As Bill Belichick would say. City council members forget what their job is. It's to make sure our streets are paved and they're clean, make sure our libraries and our parks are accessible for public use, make sure people who are vulnerable get the help they need urgently and immediately, make sure if God forbid our home or our business is broken into, our LAPD officers run into the line of fire and have the resources they need to protect us. No one else will do these things. Kevin's doing this work on the Public Works Board. There is no other agency, there's no state or federal agency that's going to come in and pave our streets and make sure that we're safe, and make sure our kids are able to walk in clean, safe streets. It's the job of a council member, and we got to hold them accountable. And at this point, right, they've been failing, and it's time for new folks to come in and to do that job.
I'll try and keep this really quick to add to Sam's point, excellent point on kind of this Twitter mob that you hear about that Sam raised. There is a cure to responding, and there's a way to respond to the mob mentality for an elected official. And that is courage and the willingness to do what's right, even if you anger the mob. Because eventually other people will see that the mob is just that, and that they are wrong. I would say that I don't know if many of you have had this happen, but if you've attended a public hearing, the way that some folks will come in and address our city council, the way that they will address our Board of Public Works, other commissions, Commissioner Vasquez that you've sat in, and now the neighborhood councils, it's unbelievable. And so it's something that, that Rob talks a bit about the controller's office. He's got a challenge there, always describing what that office does. In the city attorney's office too, with Marina and I both do it as well. But free speech is important, but you also can't impinge on other people's rights. I have watched in our public works hearing room, middle school teachers have to take their entire class up and move them out of the room because what is happening in public comment. Okay, that is not, there is balance there that the city attorney's office can certainly assist other elected officials. But the solution to the mob mentality, and you add the cancel culture on it, is to have the courage to make the right decision, even if it scares you a little along the way.
Thank you so much. So I know that our time is up, but I think I have one more question that is really good. Would you all be willing to just stay for a few more minutes? Okay, excellent. So I want to ask everyone, and I want to start first with Sam, since you went last at the beginning. Lots of people say that the city is such a mess. Such a mess. What would you or anyone run? And what do you say to people that are saying, the city is a mess?
So when I think of Los Angeles, we all talk about how much we love it and why we love it. It's not a great city because of the beaches, no offense, we're really close to a beautiful beach. Not because of the weather, not because of the Hollywood studios, because the incredible people live in the city, right? The incredible neighborhoods, the idyllic neighborhoods, they're all different and unique and quirky, probably one of the more quirkiest parts of town in this big metropolis of a city of 4 million people, right? But for too long, we've let a small minority of people in this city dictate the policy set, who gets hired for this important job, and in the dark of night set policies. They're setting policy right now about redistricting all of our districts, and we don't really know how it's going to happen. Yeah, that has to change, right? And the talent and the creativity and the hardworking people of this city I think are going to come to bear and be involved in this process like never before. And to be a part of that right now, to be a part of a collection of talent like you see on the stage, I think would embarrass the talent that we've currently hired in recent years. To be a part of this movement right now, to take back the city, to save it, to redirect it, to bring people together to solve these problems that we need to solve, it's so exciting and inspiring to me. And in terms of the mob mentality to go back for it, if they protest outside my door and in front of my kids in my home, I'm proud of it, right? That means I'm doing something right. So at this moment, we need everyone to band together and to bring all of our talents to the front.
Thank you.
Yes, LA is a mess. It's in my opening video on my website. That's my opening line. LA is a mess. We're a city in crisis, but it doesn't have to be this way. But as I said earlier, I looked at who was running for city controller, and I said, I've got to step up because I love this city so much, and we just can't kick the can down the road. And so he said, why are you running? Why would you want to run if you think so many people think that LA is a mess? Because we can do better than this. We, as you said, Sam, we're great people. We're a lot of smart folks. And you look at what Rise Together is doing and building a movement, yeah, we can do this. It's going to be a lot of hard work. But if we don't, our problems are just getting worse. And if we don't step up now, as I said, the most consequential city election in probably 50 years. And one thing I also want to mention when we're talking about the turnout, and that we had to, because the turnout was so low for the city elections, and that we now have the city elections in the even years, so with governor and with president. It wasn't always that way. In 1973, when Tom Bradley was elected mayor, it was a 70% voter turnout. It was an odd year. And Dick Reardon became mayor, 1993, 50% turnout. The turnout between Wendy Gruhl and Eric Garcetti was 19%. That's because people are tuning out, because they're losing faith, and we have to give them the faith and promise back and the hope. They cannot, too many people got angry, threw up their hands, and said, this is never gonna change. We gotta get them back.
I mean, I'm running for city attorney because I deeply, profoundly believe that we can still save our city. I believe it to the core, and I believe that it's a we effort. It's gonna take all of us. It's gonna take everybody that can come out to the voter polls, to come out, get educated on the candidates, and vote. Vote like your life here in LA depends on it, because quite frankly, it does. You've heard already how much we think, how important those 2022 elections are going to be. And look, it's a lot of hard work. I mean, everybody on this stage is taking time away from their loved ones, from their family members, from their careers to run. But it's because we love this city so much, because we believe that the situation is that dire, and because we believe that we can save our city if we do this. So, you know, we all gotta vote.
Thank you.
I remember how Los Angeles looked and felt when the Olympics came in 1984. I remember driving on the 105 freeway to LAX for the very first time and being so impressed with what this city could be and its potential. And it's become a mess over the last decade, and I have watched it get progressively worse. We are right now at a now or never moment for our city. And if we don't make immediate changes in our leadership, Los Angeles is going to die on the vine. We can do this, we will do this, and we are going to do this. This city has too much potential and too many great things to offer our constituents and our community members, our businesses and our families, to let this go on any longer. So I really welcome the opportunity to take on this challenge. I know we can do this. And you've got some great candidates who are willing to take this on and to partner with you to get it done. So thank you to everyone who's running.
Thank
Really
you,
appreciate that.
Your question was about the city being a mess.
Yeah, people are saying it's a mess.
Everyone up here agrees.
Why anyone run? Why would you run? What do you say to people like?
Well, the reason I would run in this, and I want to get to the issue of the mess in a moment, is it's not as simple as it seems. But the reason I would run, given the circumstance, as a matter of fact, because the city is in this condition, is the reason that I'm running. It's exactly why I'm running. Because I had the experience to, as I said at the beginning, to bring a different legal approach that we need to the crises that we are facing. And that's important here. But then, let me get to the issue about, and quite frankly, I've run before. Running is hard, governing is harder. And that's a very important, not an excuse, but a very important thing for you all to consider going forward in this election. The issue about the mess in the city. Now, simply, I can say, okay, we have a sanitation department. I oversaw that department for 7.5 years, right? You can give us the resources. We can go out and we can clean up the mess at this corner or that corner. What's going to happen a few days later? The mess is going to be back. We all know what we're talking about, so it is not just as simple as going and cleaning it and then figuring that, okay, we've done and we move on to the next area. There's a much deeper issue that is affecting not just the city of Los Angeles, but our region. Not just our region, but our state. And so my approach to this crisis is that there is a way through the city attorney's office. And in my closing argument, I'm going to make an argument for both Marina and myself in this race. But this is a regional issue that the city attorney's office is the most unique office that exists that will be on the ballot to solve, because we can bring the rest of the region into the solution. The city of Los Angeles alone is not going to be able to solve the problem of what is commonly called the mess, because it's not just trash on the sidewalk. It is a much complicated, very personal in many ways for everyone. It is at our core, there is a question of compassion, there's a question of humanity, there's a question of civil rights. All of it exists in the one word that was the basis of this question, which is the word mess. So it's not that simple to just send the sanitation department over to pick it up. And that's what is at the core of this election. Now, I will say there's a great opportunity looking at the candidate base up here today. Other than Tracy Park, all of us are running in an open seat. That's an opportunity for new leadership. Tracy's the only one running against an incumbent. But the opportunity for new leadership exists with all of us. My point on the other offices is the person who's in it now is not going to be in it a year and a half from now. So please keep that in mind when you talk to other people about the excitement of the 2022 municipal race.
All right, so that is all for now. Thank you so much, Kevin, Tracy, Sam, Marina, Rob. Thank you so much for being here. Again, we'll want to invite all of you to the next candidate forum on Thursday with a pool of different candidates. We appreciate so much your coming. And now we're going to have a little bit of a social hour so you can come to the candidates and speak to them and get to know them in a much more personal way. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you all.